down the stretch. And the Pistons signed LiAngelo Ball, a move his father LeVar expects will blow up the franchise in a good way. Are Dennis and Brian as optimistic as the big baller himself? Join the conversation by commenting live on YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch. This is the Fifth Chapter with Dennis Fithian and Brian Chapman. He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fifth Chapter. Brian Chapman, Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fifth Chapter. That's right. Welcome to the Fifth Chapter. I am Brian Chapman. He is Dennis Fithian. And hold on just a second. Let me check my burner account and send out some illicit tweets to defend my reputation. Sorry about that, Dennis. Just using my burner account.
That's all right. I have a burner account. G Afternoon 21.
That's right. That's a real burner account.
It is, but I don't go on there and like, Fifth Chapter is the greatest show in the world, man. I don't know why everybody's dogging it.
Yeah, and if you're not sure what we're referring to, former Detroit Lions head coach Matt Patricia was accused of having his very own burner account because I guess some high schooler wanted to see what it would be like to create a burner account. He went through this elaborate scheme where he created the account. He started tweeting at folks back in September. He chose Matt Patricia because he wanted to choose a guy who NFL fans would dislike, and obviously Lions fans have disliked Matt Patricia for a long time and had not tweeted since September. And then once he got fired, he started tweeting at all these members of the dishonest media defending Matt Patricia's credibility. And I think the Twitter handle was something like Eddie P. Lions fan because Edward is Matt Patricia's middle name.
Hey, you know what? Catfishing and burner accounts is the way to go in the 21st century, man. Get on board.
Yeah, that's...
If you haven't been catfished or burned by an account, then you're not living.
Yeah, I haven't been catfished, but I have gone on a couple of dates where the woman was a bit plumper or a lot plumper than I thought she was going to be. So that certainly has happened. Definitely want.
I'll have to get you. I'll have to tell you my Paige Davidson catfish story one time.
Uh-oh. Dennis got catfished. All right, well, definitely want to thank everybody out there for tuning into episode number 59. That's what we're 59 episodes in. We've
59.
got 5 fantastic chapters for you. Thanks to all who are watching via YouTube, via Spotify, YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch, and to those who are listening to the podcast via Apple, Google, and Spotify. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and participate in each show by sending in your feedback to Dennis via Facebook Live and YouTube. Dennis will be reading that throughout the show. And if you're wondering what the heck we're going to be talking about, let's take a look at today's book. And in the second chapter, in the Big Ten, it's become pretty much a mess if you look at this conference season. But the Ohio State Buckeyes are trying to find a way to get into the playoff. We'll tell you whether or not they should get there and what fans should think about this conference's season as a whole. In the third chapter, the Lions have not a new regime yet, but they've got a new interim head coach. We'll tell you what Lions fans should be hoping to see down the stretch of this same old Lions season. In the fourth chapter, LiAngelo Ball is a Detroit Piston. Not the Ball that many Pistons fans were hoping they would get at least a couple of weeks ago, but one of LeVar's sons is a Detroit Piston. How excited should fans be? And there was also a blockbuster move made yesterday in the league. And then, of course, in the fifth chapter, it is the major wager. But, Dennis, we'll start off, as usual, with the first chapter. And in this first chapter, we go to Michigan football, where they are not in the hunt for the college football playoff. They're not in the hunt for the Big Ten championship. But we're talking about them and the college football playoff in the same sentence because of what happened on ESPN on Tuesday when the newest CFP standings were announced. Standings that had Alabama at 1, Notre Dame at 2, Clemson at 3, and the Deep South Buckeyes at 4. Obviously, Michigan's last opponent before championship week is Ohio State. And Michigan has a Rona outbreak right now. They have a coronavirus outbreak, according to the Associated Press. And this story just came out like about an hour or two ago. There are at least 12 positive tests among the Michigan football team. They don't know how many are players and how many are staff members, but the Associated Press is reporting at least 12 positive results. That forced them to pause their team activities on Monday. That forced them to cancel their game 2 days from now against Maryland, and the game against Ohio State in 9 days is in jeopardy. Ohio State needs that game because they've only played 4 games, partially because they have their own coronavirus outbreak, and if they don't get to play each of their final 2 games, then they won't qualify for the Big Ten championship game. On their TV show for the CFP standings on Tuesday, here is what former Ohio State quarterback and current ESPN college football analyst Kirk Herbstreit said.
Are they going to have enough to be able to play against Ohio or against Michigan? And are they going to miss the Big Ten championship? And how is the committee going to evaluate them? The fact that they've played 4 games and they're still sitting there in the top 4, now it comes down to they were going to play Michigan State Saturday. I still think Michigan waves the white flag, potentially avoids playing Ohio State next week. And then, David, they'll potentially get a game on the 19th. They could be sitting there with 6 games. And Michigan, is that fair, David? Michigan could opt out, basically, of that game and keep Ohio State out of 6 games to qualify for the Big Ten championship. That doesn't make sense to me, but that potentially could happen next week.
If you can't beat them, then try to keep them out of the playoff another way. I mean, if you're Michigan, you've been getting beat like a drum.
So
I guess
that's
some
what they
other
said
approach
during the show on Tuesday at first. But when Reese Davis heard that, he let them go on for a couple minutes longer. But when Reese Davis heard what Kirk Herbstreit said, he wanted to give Herbie an opportunity to clarify. And here is what Herbstreit said in response to Reese Davis.
I'm not going to sit here and let this stand that you guys just implied, and perhaps you didn't want to. I'll give you a chance to clarify it if you want, that Michigan will opt out of the game and dodge the game simply to keep Ohio State out of the championship game. If you're being facetious, that's perfectly fine, but I'm going to give you a chance to clarify there, if that's because I don't believe that for a second. You might not be able to play because they paused activities, but I don't think they'll dodge it. I mean,
I don't know all the. I know they shut down their operation this week, and I don't know all the numbers as far as their COVID is concerned. I'm just saying we live in such a strange world that I've talked to a lot of coaches around the country that have said they really feel teams are opting out to avoid playing games because they don't want to get humiliated. They don't want to get. They don't want to lose with the team that they have. They don't necessarily have too many COVID positives. They just don't want to have to take the field with the team they have and go get embarrassed. So they're basically waving the white flag and saying we can't play. So there's a lot of that's being talked about around the country. I'm not suggesting, I have no idea what Michigan's situation is. I'm saying they have the power to potentially say, hey, we can't play next week. And there's nothing Ohio State could do about it if they decide to say that.
So you had Kirk Herbstreit clarify there, and he added on to that by going on to Detroit radio yesterday and speaking with the morning show, saying that he wanted to apologize and he didn't think that Michigan was going to just duck out and wave the white flag. But that wasn't good enough for Michigan's athletic director, Ward Manuel. And last night, it was Ward Manuel's opportunity to strike back at Kirk Herbstreit.
Ward, for those insinuating there's some sort of covert agenda at play here, you would say what?
I think it's ridiculous. I have to pause because my words, the anger, I was infuriated by the insinuation that Michigan would do anything other than play a football game. We've been playing this game since 1879. 1879, and we're winning this program for a reason, because we play whoever's in front of us. And the only way we want to keep anybody from moving on is to beat them on the fields of play. And to insinuate that, to say something other than that, is a statement by a fool. And it is something that just I can't tell you how embarrassed I am for the Big Ten Conference to have one of their representatives who played this game to say that about any team in this conference. And to say it about college football and the student athletes around this country who are trying to play games during a pandemic. It is ridiculous and sad.
Ward, you.
So there's a response from Michigan's athletic director, Dennis. Obviously, people have been joking about Michigan pretending to have the coronavirus outbreak all year, and they can just use that to skip out on the Ohio State game so they don't get bludgeoned again. But now we're actually 9 days away from the game, and there is an outbreak, and we've got comments from Herbstreit and Manuel. What's your takeaway?
Well, from people that are on Twitter or people that are calling in on a radio station, that's their credibility. When you're talking about somebody that's based his career, talking about Kirk Herbstreit, on being above the fray and being the face of college football, he has based his career on not doing those kind of things and having speculation. He's been a total professional, and this was totally unprofessional. So, well, you say it was out of character. There was one other time when he sabotaged Michigan's coaching search with Les Miles. And so that time, I was willing to say, hey, fool me once, now, fool me twice, shame on me kind of thing. But, he apologized right afterwards. But when you're in the position that he is, and you're a former Buckeye, you come off, looking like a troll at some level. And when you're using it like, rivalry stuff, and people never take anybody's, it's a hard thing to do to establish some credibility when you're in college football, because people that love the game so much and the intensity of the rivalries is so hot that a lot of people don't believe whatever you say, even if you're trying to be play it straight down the middle and try not to be biased. But when you do this and then you're bringing in COVID and accusing somebody of Michigan, their biggest rival, of doing it, it's totally out of bounds. And he knew what he was doing. He tried juicing up his Tuesday show, but the thing is, are we taking COVID seriously or we're not? Whether it's joking about it, yeah, Michigan fans, there's a lot of them that would rather not play that game because they don't want to just take their beat down. They would rather just skip out on that and not have to hear about it for the next 3 months. But it's one thing for fans and people on a keyboard to be doing it. It's another one. It's another thing for a guy that for 25 years has put himself in a position and has stayed above all that to do it. That's my thought.
Yeah, when I look at what Kirk Herbstreit did, I think obviously you're right about how he's attempted his entire TV career to be above the fray, to be non-biased, and I think he's done a pretty good job of that. He actually, if I'm not mistaken, about 5 or 10 years ago, had to move from Columbus to Nashville, Tennessee, and the reason he had to do so is because the Ohio State fans were getting annoyed with him because the Buckeye fans wanted him to be more biased toward Ohio State, and he refused to do so. So I think that he is a pretty straight shooter, which you don't always like to say about an Ohio State Buckeye. But I think that when it comes to what he said, first of all, I don't think it would have gotten nearly as much attention if Reese Davis didn't go back to what he said and say, hey, I want to give you a chance to clean up what you said. Because I think that most folks, when they were watching that, just said, hey, this is what a lot of folks have been talking about, particularly around here. This is what a lot of folks have been talking about, finding a reason to duck out of it, and that's that. Additionally, he said that he has talked to coaches across the country who said that because they can't field competitive teams due to coronavirus shortened rosters, that they have ducked out of games or waved the white flag, whatever you want to say, and so this would fall in line with that. He said he didn't have any direct knowledge of Michigan doing that, but based on what he's heard from other colleges, that would make sense. In addition, earlier today, I believe it was, Ryan Day said that his Buckeyes are going to be shorthanded this weekend against Michigan State. Now, obviously, even if they're going to be so shorthanded that it would put their opportunity to win the game in jeopardy, they have to play this game if they want to qualify for the Big Ten championship game. So if they have If they're missing 10 scholarship players, if they're missing 7 starters, they're going to do whatever they can against Michigan State to win, even if it's a razor-thin margin. But, I don't have a huge problem with what Kirk Herbstreit had to say. I don't think that he needed to apologize for what he needed to say, because he used it in the context of all these other coaches in college football telling him that they have been ducking out of games because of the coronavirus pandemic. And if Michigan did it, we wouldn't know necessarily what their numbers are. Like we had the AP report come out a couple of hours ago saying that at least 12 individuals in the Michigan football program tested positive, but that's based on a report not coming from the university. If they would clean things up, if they would be transparent, we would have a better idea of whether they were ducking out or not. When Wisconsin had their outbreak, what do we find out? The day after their first game, Graham Mertz tested positive. I don't think any other players were released by name, but day by day they were putting out on their Twitter feed, 5 people have tested positive, 8 people have tested positive, 15 people have tested positive. So day by day, you knew how many folks have tested positive, and Michigan's giving nothing. That can lead to speculation.
Well, the good news for Kirk Herbstreit is that he's going to be welcomed with open arms back in Columbus if he wants to move back to Ohio. So that's good news for his family. You know what? He should apologize. I mean, if you purport to be a professional your whole career and then act unprofessional, you should cough that up. Like, you want to get into some speculation about COVID, and you're right about the part about the rules here and the transparency. Teams can do whatever they want, but accusing them without then, backing it up here without any inside knowledge, that is or without spilling the beans on it, that's the very essence of, being unprofessional.
Well, he was doing it based on other coaches.
Against the wall. What's that now?
He was doing it based on what other coaches have told him they have done. He said that Michigan might fall in line with what the other teams have done.
Well, he was insinuating that Michigan was going to use a disease, COVID, and skip the game, which is totally unprofessional.
Yeah, that would be, but it would also be in line with what other teams have done. The other thing is that when it comes to skipping the game, there are 2 ways that you can skip the game. Number one, if you don't have the required number of scholarship players available to play in the game due to the coronavirus outbreak, then you wouldn't play the game. But the other thing is, and this is what Michigan's doing for the Maryland game from what I understand, is if your team doctors and team medical officials, out of an abundance of caution, don't think it's a good idea to practice and play for the game, then they can recommend that you not play. So Michigan could be in a situation where they have enough scholarship players next week to play, even though everybody who's tested positive is not going to be available to play for 3 weeks. But out of an abundance of caution, the doctors could say, you know what? We're going to recommend that you not play this game. And then Jim Harbaugh and Ward Manuel can say, hey, we're just doing what the doctors say. We're not going to overrule them. We're going to skip out on this game.
Yeah, look, it just comes down really about who you're talking about. And what you're talking about is a guy who's the face of college football. And maybe it gets down to, it would be nice if Kirk Herbstreit, either didn't go to college or went to some D2 college or some group of 5 college. But when, you're in this position and then you make the accusation against your bitter rival, you pull yourself right back in to like the lowest common denominator, and it's just really bad taste. I mean, that's what it is. And, do
you think he's lost his credibility?
Do I think he's lost his credibility? I think he's lost some for sure. Like, you know what? He, over 25 years, he's been really good. I mean, he's been really good. He loves college football. I think he tries to do the best to, support this game and everything. But, with, rank comes responsibility. And he's up there and, acting like he's on some talk show in Columbus, like he's the mad dog of Columbus throwing, hot takes out there. He loses credibility when it comes down to, hey, here's somebody that's a total professional, that's the voice of college football. Let's listen to what he has to say and really take it all in. No, this is a guy who's coughing up and showing his true colors here a little bit. Look, I think that he was sincere in his apology. He came right out and said it. But you know what? This is the second time straight at Michigan that he's done something when he ruined their coaching search the one time by, spilling some beans, during game day. And now this. So, it's just, whether you talk about tainting somebody's legacy, it was bad taste and it was unprofessional.
Well,
That's all. Like, he's not going to lose his job. I don't think he should be suspended. I don't think he should be taken off any games or anything like that. It's just it's in the eye of the beholder now. And, if you think, joking around or speculating about the virus is something that, hey, let's use anything, for a little entertainment or get some juice on the broadcast and anything goes. Hey, if that's good for you and you're like, yeah, you want more of that, that's fine. To me, I've always respected Kirk Herbstreit, and I know it's a very difficult position that he's put himself in, especially because he's an Ohio State alum, but he's done a great job at it. But then he came out and, he acted like a complete unprofessional.
See,
So,
I would agree with just about all of that, except for the part where he says that he's spoken to coaches across the country and they have done this. This is not something that he's just saying that Michigan would do out of the blue. He's saying that this is a trend. Obviously, remember a couple of weeks ago, Dabo Swinney accused Florida State of ducking out of the game because they knew they were going to get crushed. And if you know,
that was week 2. That was week 2 by Dabo.
Well, that may have been weak on his part. It may have been that Florida State didn't have enough players, and they couldn't. Obviously, there was a lot of controversy about how they ducked out of the game or decided not to play the game on the day of the game. And obviously, Michigan didn't do that with Maryland. They told them 5 days beforehand. But I think when you qualify that by saying, I've talked to coaches across the country, and this is what they're doing, then it makes sense. And, how much of a football game are you truly going to get if you've got like 2 players above the minimum in terms of scholarship players and you're going up against another team that's pretty much fully loaded? Even you can take that Ohio State has missing some guys. If you got two above the minimum in terms of scholarship players, you're not going to put your team in the best position. And your doctors might say, you know what, the Big Ten standards as a whole are not strict enough. Here at Michigan, we have higher standards, and we're not going to allow our players to play. I didn't have an issue with what Kirk Herbstreit had to say because he qualified it. That was the key.
Well, again, you know what? If this was something about, some speculation about USC and UCLA and positioning for them to possibly get into the college football playoff, but no, it's his team. It is the Buckeyes. It is against their bitter rival, and the insinuation. I mean, that's what it's about. I think
that makes it juicy.
Well, it does make it juicy, and it really does hit home here too, because if you take 1,000 Michigan fans, I think 500 of them, I think probably more than that, they don't want to play this game.
Yeah.
They don't really care if Jim Harbaugh actually did use some ruse or something and canceled this game. They don't want to take that beat down. They don't want to hear it for the next 6 months. What a garbage program.
I wonder if the
how
bigger
far
reason
it's fallen. So that's part of it.
I wonder if the bigger reason Michigan fans wouldn't want to play this game would be either would it be because they don't want to get crushed or because they know this could ruin their season? Because, or maybe not ruin it, but it would make it a heck of a lot harder for Ohio State to go to the playoff. Because if they don't win a conference championship, obviously that's something the Buckeyes pride themselves on doing. They've won every conference championship since 2017. And even when 2016 happened and Penn State won the Big Ten championship and beat Ohio State, everybody, including myself, knew that the Buckeyes are the better team and they went to the playoffs. I think that a lot of Michigan fans would say, you know what? Not avoiding the annual beatdown is nice, but if we can ruin their season, that's even better. And if the CFP is trying to figure out what are we supposed to do with this 5 or 6 win Ohio State football team when Florida's played 11 games, Texas A&M's played 10 or 11 games, they might just decide Ohio State hasn't played enough games. That might be enough for Michigan fans to say, please don't play this game, whether we were going to get crushed or not. Just do it to stick it to the Buckeyes. That's the only way we can stick it to them.
Well, you know what? I think that that sounds like on brand for Twitter, people coming on there. Yeah, not only we don't have to play them and take our medicine, we can also screw them.
Yes.
Yay.
Yes.
Kind of thing. But that might be good for your average person, to go out there and say that and that's fun. I just think when you put COVID in there, bless you, and you start using. Okay, we're going to use the pandemic, to stick it to our rival, and that we're going to beg out of a game, and we're going to duck somebody because we're going to lie about or fudge our numbers, or use these numbers so we can just get out of the game and then screw the Buckeyes. I mean, that's where it gets to that area. It's like, all right, That's where it crosses the line. And fans, there's no line for fans, and we see
That's
that.
right.
We see that when it comes down to everything. Now everything goes.
Well, think about this juicy nugget. Jim Harbaugh is going into the final year of his contract. Is he going to come in? He's not going to come in from a position of strength, but is his strength going to be even lower if he gets blown out 77-3, or if he gets to avoid that and he can say, hey, this year didn't lose to Ohio State. We won 2 or 3 games, but didn't get crushed by the Buckeyes. It's a little bit stronger of a position for him to work with if he is going to get a contract extension, as you suggest he will.
Yeah, well, that part's true too. Hey, we didn't lose to Ohio State this year.
That's right.
Okay. Hey, we actually prevented them from going to the college football playoff. Yeah, I'll just get back to Herbstreit. I thought it was unprofessional of him from a guy that has put himself above all of that over the years. I mean, that's the thing to me. We've got a lot of feedback on this, and let's get to that right now. Reno, right off the top. Let's get it on. He says. Kenneth says, I'm sorry, not Harbaugh, but Herbstreit. Sometimes when you need your glasses, they kind of look the same. Herbstreit is such a homer. Why is he on television if he can't name names?
No. Because all reporters, it's just about all reporters, allow their subjects to have the condition of anonymity because that's how they get a lot of their stories. If you got government sources or team sources that are constantly giving out information with their name attached to it, then they're going to be...
He's not a reporter.
Well,
he's never done any of that.
Well, no, he's not a reporter like Tom Rinaldi. He's not like Lisa Salters. We get that, but he can talk to his sources around the country, talk to coaches, and report what they've had to say.
All right,
he's not going to put out an article.
Here's the interesting thing about that. You go over his 25-year career, 2 times he's come out there and put reporting type things. One is when Les Miles was getting ready to play in a championship game in Michigan, was going after him in their coaching search. That's when he started using some sources, and now you're talking about this time that he's doing it too.
Those are 2 times
against his bitter rival.
Those are 2 times you mentioned.
For a guy that stands up there and sits up there and acts like he's the face of college football. He just loses some credibility.
Look, I don't like sitting here defending a Buckeye, but those are 2 times that you remember. I can't imagine that in his 25 years, all these different hundreds of shows that he's done on ESPN, and there's only been 2 times when he's reported information.
Man, he's all milk and cookies. You watch him every week. He's up there. Hey, these are the teams. We love the game. We're looking forward to going out there. Man, this is great. This is what all college football is all about. Hey, Les Miles got something going. Michigan's going, oops, that was my bad. That was just some sources.
He's got everybody's number in his phone.
We got a pandemic.
He's got 100 coaches' numbers in his phone. He can contact them all at any time and say, hey, I'm Kirk Herbstreit. I want to know what you're thinking about this. And then he can use that on his show. I'm sure he does. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I'm sure that in his hundreds of college football game day shows, he has said, I've talked to coaches around the league about this new trend in college football, and here's what they're telling me. I can't imagine this is only the second time he's done this, and both times have been to the detriment of Michigan football.
Well, you know what? I give him a pass on the other one, but I think because of the nature of it's a pandemic, and you using it's just a bad taste. I just put it at bad taste and unprofessional. I mean, what else do you want me to say about it? Oh, chap, good. That's just him being Herbie and using some sources here. Let's go to Keith. Michigan is afraid of Ohio State. Hell, I'm afraid of them. He has a smiley face after that with an emoji. Reno says, I think it is absolutely irresponsible for Herbstreit to make an accusation like that. He can take that scripted apology and stick it where the sun don't shine. Over 260,000 people have died. This is not a joke, you dipstick. I don't think he's calling you a dipstick, Chap. I think he's directing that at Herbstreit. I'll let you know what the hell. I think he's directed it at you, too.
Maybe he is.
He's the Buckeye. And it looks bad, but we all know Michigan will probably lose worse than last year, 56-27, 62-39. Sheesh. Oh, yeah, if the game is on, Michigan's going to get a beat down.
Well,
they're going to get beat down.
Let me say this. If Kirk Herbstreit was as much of a homer as Desmond Howard, then I think that you would have a case, because we all know that Desmond Howard is not unbiased at all. He shows his colors every year.
That's the exact point. I never take Desmond Howard when he makes a prediction when it comes down to a Michigan game. I never take him seriously. I know that he finally picked against Michigan the other week against Wisconsin for the first time in his life, but I've never taken Desmond Howard seriously when it comes down to him picking the games. Now, when you hear something about Kirk Herbstreit, how can you take him serious? Because he's put himself out there
because of his years of credibility.
I've moved out of Ohio State. I've moved out of Columbus. I'm above all that. Hey, guys, I'm going to leave all that stuff, all that crazy rivalry stuff to you guys. Oh, yeah, Michigan's got a coaching search out. I'm going to sabotage. Oh, yeah, Michigan's waving the white flag. I've talked to some other coaches. This is what's going on. You guys.
Look, I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan waved the white flag.
Look at it. By the way, you got a smudge on your shirt over there on your chest.
Yeah, it's called Penn State.
Yeah,
Penn State. Yeah, they know how to. They actually know how to win in Ann Arbor. Last time I checked, Michigan is gonna. Penn State's gonna win more games in Ann Arbor this year than Michigan. Take that. Take that.
He is from Ohio. He got exposed. He is a snake. That's from Kenneth. Keith says, I'm a Michigan fan. I was hoping that game would be canceled because they would get their brains beat in so bad. Reno says, I totally agree. And it's a slap in the face to these young men who love to play the game.
Yeah, they do love to play.
Brian, stop making excuses for Herbie.
I don't like defending a Buckeye, but I'm telling it like it is. All right, we got some more. You want to go to the second chapter?
0-5. No need to go to 0-6. Don't play the game. You lose the battle, but win the war. Kenneth says, Brian, he is hated by a lot of colleges in the South.
I'll tell you this. There would be a lot of Michigan fans who would love J.I. Block M. Harbaugh, would love Ward Manuel, and would love the team doctors. Whether it's true or not, if they canceled the Ohio State game. Because of what it would do to Ohio State's CFP chances. And speaking of which, let's turn the page to the second chapter.
All right, that does get us to the Ohio State. They're taking on Michigan State, and Ryan Day, who's not going to be available, the head coach for the Buckeyes in that game, today said that his team will be short-handed. We don't know what's going to happen with U of M, but somebody else, Barry Alvarez, the athletic director at Wisconsin, saying that, you know what, they could be looking into changing the minimum requirement for the Big Ten title game. Buckeyes have played 4. They're going to play 5. They need 6. So on that December ties, what do you think about these last-minute adjustments in favor of the Scarlet and Gray?
Yeah, well, I put up Barry Alvarez's quote on the screen so everybody could see, and he said, I would think that if something would happen to Ohio State and they'd have to cancel another game, that's something that we've got to revisit. They're sitting up there still ranked number 4. Our league can't keep them from having the opportunity if they have the chance to be in the finals. So obviously they'd be going out of the way to help the Deep South Buckeyes. Look, this season's been a train wreck, and obviously we're in a situation right now where we're talking about sabotaging a season and white flag and let's change the rules at the last minute to get the Ohio State Buckeyes in there. It's been a train wreck of a season, and I understand what the Big Ten would want to do to try to find a way to sneak Ohio State in. I'd be in favor of keeping the Buckeyes out, though, if they only play 5 or 6 games, because, you know, if Ohio State beats Michigan State, whether it's by 1 or by 40 points on Saturday, and they can't play Michigan, I think that we'd all still believe that they're the second, or that they're the best team in the conference. I don't think anybody would make a case for Indiana, especially since they played head-to-head, or Wisconsin or Northwestern. And obviously, Ohio State, if there wasn't this little rule there, they'd have the chance to play Northwestern head-to-head. But I think that there's got to be some sort of minimum number of games that you have to play in order to get into the CFP, in order to get to the conference championship game. They decided that was 6. And I think that you should have to play at least 7 games to get into the CFP. 5 or 6 games, we're talking about half of a typical season. Typically, you need 13, you play 13 games, at least 12 if you're Notre Dame, but 13 times in order to get into the CFP. SEC is going to have 10 or 11 games, and that's 10 or 11 times to get upset. Ohio State is most likely going to have 6 games. That's nothing. And their strength of schedule, I think, is also important, because this is another reason to keep Ohio State out of the CFP. Their strength of schedule is extremely weak. They've beaten Nebraska, Penn State, Rutgers, and Indiana. They have a combined record of 9-14. If you include Michigan State in there, assuming they play their game this weekend, that's a combined record of 11-17. They haven't proven themselves against really anybody this year against Indiana. And then if you look at what's transpired in the course of those games, yes, they crushed Nebraska, who might be the worst team in the conference, but they beat Rutgers by only 22, not 52, and they give up 27 points to Rutgers. The toughest opponent on their schedule was supposed to be Penn State, who didn't win their first game until last week, and they only beat Penn State by 13 points. That sorry offense scored 25. And then their toughest opponent was Indiana, a typical doormat, but a stronger team this year. They beat them by 7 at home, 42-35. And then now they're going to try to prove themselves against a couple of bad teams from the state of Michigan and then some nerds from Northwestern. Look, they could, based on how they played so far this year, they might fail to get the style points they need against the teams from Michigan and then squeak by Northwestern. This is not a compelling case that Ohio State is making so far. And now you're going to try to make it easier for them by bending the rules to get them into the CFP. Ohio State so far isn't worth it.
Well, I think there's a bunch of things going on both sides. I think the College Football Playoff Committee they have said that they value conference championships, so that can hurt Ohio State. And yet, when it comes down to money and those games in the College Football Playoff, there's no coincidence. It's not a coincidence that they had Ohio State 4. They want Ohio State in that College Football Playoff. And so the College Football Playoff wants them there. The Big Ten wants them there because they get, I think, $9 million, a part of that money, and the Big Ten gets to share that equally through all the schools. They don't want 2 ACC teams in there and 2 SEC teams in there. They don't want the Big Ten to get shut out. So, and here's the hard part, like for the Big Ten, like they already they tried to give Ohio State the easy path when they came in, knowing that they were their best shot to get into this college football playoff, giving them the 2 easiest non-conference games that they could, or 2 crossover games, not the non-conference games. So they gave them that. And to me, bending the rules here, because it's a pandemic, in other years you'd say, hey, you're going to have to ride this out. You could, but I think is it Rutgers and Maryland that are playing on December 12th? I think that they could just tell Rutgers, hey, you know what? You don't get to play this game. Maryland's going to go play Ohio State just so they can get their requisite number of games so they can get into the Big Ten championship game, because they could use that against them. I don't have a problem with that. Because, one, it is it's a pandemic year, and 2, they really are the best team when you take a look at it. So I don't have a problem bending those rules. I know that it's Ohio State and that Michigan fans want to do everything they can, and probably State fans too. Screw them, and obviously you do too. You don't want to see it, but because you for whatever reason. But this is the thing, when you're in the top, whether it's a team, whether it is a player, you even get more than the benefit of the doubt. You get preferential treatment. It's like that's the way it is in sports. If you don't like that, like, you've got to knock out the champ to beat him.
Well, no, look, I don't think that anybody is disputing that the Deep South Buckeyes are the best team in the conference. And the problem is, have they done enough to deserve to go play in the conference championship game by so far playing 4 games and then potentially only playing 5 of the 8 games on their schedule? It's not their fault.
Pandemic again.
I'm not blaming them.
Like these non-pandemic rules, like, okay, let's have these hard and fast rules when it's a pandemic. You got to
just play 3/4 of your games. And I get it's not their fault, because yes, they got coronavirus, and there was a game that was canceled because Maryland got coronavirus, and now Michigan could be the third straw that gets them out of it. That's not their fault either. But if you only get 5 opportunities to prove yourself, and so far through 4 opportunities, they have not looked like world beaters, I don't think that's enough.
Honestly, Chap, if you were involved in the Big Ten and you wanted to get Ohio State into the college football playoffs,
I got a plan.
Just say, hey, we're just going to let this ride out. You have to play 6 games, and we'll just put ourselves at the mercy of the committee. or are you going to bend your rules to try to get them in there?
Here's how I would bend the rules. I would not bend the rules by saying, hey, if the Buckeyes don't play any more games, if Michigan State has an outbreak beginning on Friday and they want to cancel the game and then Michigan can't play, we're just going to stick Ohio State in at 4-0, having played half the schedule. But I would bend the rules like this, and this is going to piss off Nebraska fans. But what I would do is I would say, all right, look, you're sitting there, you played 5 games after beating Michigan State. Michigan is not going to be able to play you because they're either ducking the game or they have a legitimate coronavirus outbreak. We're going to allow you to schedule a game out of conference. Cincinnati, I believe, has to play their conference championship game on the 19th, but BYU is not in a conference championship game. They're an undefeated independent. Allow Ohio State to go play, instead of Michigan, play either BYU or play Texas A&M. Texas A&M is sitting at number 5. They're not going to win the SEC West because Alabama's going to win. They're going to play Florida in the SEC championship game. If Ohio State played Texas A&M on a neutral site, 4 versus 5, the day before the CFP was released, and on the same day, maybe even at the same time as the Big Ten championship game, that could be basically a play-in game for the CFP, because Texas A&M wants an opportunity to prove they deserve to be ahead of a 4 or 5 win Ohio State team, and Ohio State would want an opportunity to prove that they are one of the best teams in the country. You could either schedule it during the week of the 12th, or you could schedule the week of the 19th. I would be in favor of having it during championship week, the week of the 19th, because Texas A&M isn't playing anybody, and just say, you know what, whoever was supposed to play Ohio State, go schedule somebody else in the Big Ten or schedule somebody else in the SEC, BYU, whatever. I think that makes more sense if you want to bend the rules for Ohio State. But don't put them in the Big Ten championship game if they played 4 or 5 games.
Well, it's your night, Chap. You're getting a lot of positive feedback here. This one coming in from David B. B. Chap, keeping it real, as usual. And Reno says, preach it, Chap. I totally agree with you 100%.
Yeah, so in the second chapter, you're defending the Buckeyes.
Well, I guess that's true. It's making me stutter. I don't think I've ever done that before.
That's right. I was quote unquote defending the Buckeye in the first chapter. You're doing it in the second chapter.
Well, let's get out of the second chapter then. I've got to.
All right, let's turn the page then to the third chapter, and that takes us to the same old Lions. In 3 days, it's going to be another same old Lions Sunday, and they'll be taking on Mitch Trubisky and the Chicago Bears with Darrell Bevell as the interim coach. Matt, the rocket scientist Patricia, never beat the Bears. Never beat them. Had all those chances, never beat them, and Bevell could do so in his first game. The Lions, bad football team, 4-7. Bears got off to that hot start, but they've lost 5 in a row to drop to 5-6. They're now a bad football team. We know the Lions aren't going to the playoffs, but we have to look forward to something on Sunday. We have to look forward to something for the rest of the year with regards to the Lions. Dennis, what are you looking forward to seeing on Sunday and for the rest of the year with these same old Lions?
I'm looking forward to picking up Mitchell Trubisky and putting him in my fantasy lineup is what I'm looking forward to doing. That's usually what I would say. If Matt Patricia was still the coach, I think I would execute that move. I'm not sure here because of the uncertainty with Darrell Bevell now as the head coach and the team coming out and playing for their new coach. That's the thing. I want to see if it looks any different. I mean, I've seen these 2.5 years with Matt Patricia at the helm where the team didn't respect him, and it was just total lunacy on the field. I wanted to see if they just look any different under Bevell, and I would like to see Stafford finish strong. One, if they decide to keep him, draft a quarterback, and have Stafford be like their bridge QB, or if they decide, which is pretty viable here, to trade him at some point in the offseason. Him playing well is only going to be able to help that. So Stafford finishing strong is good for the Lions. You getting to the point for the last 20 or 30 years where you're out of the playoffs and everybody's just like, gets this like bitter, like, now I want them to lose. They're ruining the playoff. They're ruining the draft position. And, like when it gets down to the last 3 or 4 games and you see where your spot's going to be and, lose the final games here. They've still got enough games where, I would like to see Stafford. Like, sure, like if I could pick him to lose the rest of the games, fine. But, I'm not going to get upset about them, potentially, falling into a victory or something here. But I think the thing to look forward to the most, a guy like DeAndre Swift, who looks like he's now going to play here, where earlier in the day it wasn't looking like that. It was actually looking pretty ominous with some of the reports there. But Stafford finishing strong, and just seeing how they look without, the pencil pusher on the sideline.
Yeah, and speaking of DeAndre Swift, I put up a tweet from Dave Burkett, because you can see at 3:10 p.m. he reported Adrian Peterson sounding a concerning note about DeAndre Swift as he battles a brain injury. Said Swift hasn't been himself while dealing with the injury, hasn't had the same energy level. Said Swift had to take care of his health. So that spooked a lot of Detroit Lions fans. It spooked a lot of people that follow the Detroit Lions. Like, hey, is this guy going to turn into the next Javid Best? But then a little while later, you had another tweet from Dave Burkett, and this came an hour and 1 minute later, saying that Swift had passed the concussion protocol, but he was missing practice due to an illness. Still, though, you had Peterson saying that he did not seem like he was his same usual self. I mean, I would say with regards to DeAndre Swift, that's like one of the top guys that I would want to see down the stretch continue to play well, because before he had his concussion, he had 2 games in a row where he started and he was starting to put up some significant numbers. He had 97 total yards against the Vikings. He had 149 total yards and a touchdown against the football team. So, and you had Adrian Peterson saying that the Lions waited too long to make Swift their starting running back. Now that he's got 5 games to go, he's rested his legs for a couple of weeks, not of his own volition, but because he had a concussion. Let's see how he can fare down the stretch, carrying the bulk of the workload, getting not 50-50 carries with him, but a few carries mixed in for Kerryon Johnson, but 75% of the carries. Maybe because it's his first game back after the brain injury, he only gets 60% or 50% of the carries. But I'd like to see how he fares getting 70 to 75% of the carries down the stretch. Also, Jeff Okudah. All right, this is a guy who needs to start playing like he did when he was at, we've been saying it all show long, Ohio State. A lot of fans were calling him a bust after his first game or after his first 2 games, because in those games he was objectively awful. I gave him a pass because while he was dragging behind these wide receivers, he had a bum hamstring. That's why he missed the first game, a hamstring injury. That makes it difficult to run. But that was in September. This is not October anymore. This is not November anymore. It's December, and he needs to start playing like he's a surefire top cornerback prospect. And if he finishes the season the way that he's played all year long, then he's a bust, and there's no reason for optimism. There is no way you could project after his Ohio State career that he would play like this. And if he does not shape it up in the next 5 games, then you've got yourself a bust.
Well, Kirk Herbstreit reportedly says that Okudah has taken a positive test and is actually going to taint his own personal test, so he can get out of the next couple games.
Wave the white flag on the season.
Yeah, because he wants to opt out because he's scared. Now, see how irresponsible that is, saying stupid things like that? Of course, Herbstreit wouldn't do that because Okudah's a Buckeye. That would hurt their recruiting rankings or hurt potential DBs that would want to go to Ohio State or something like that. But yeah, seeing Okudah, I wouldn't mind seeing Hockenson take a step forward. He's kind of up and down. A little promise there, looks pretty good, but doesn't look like
he's not a star. He's just solid.
Right. You'd like to see him take a step where maybe he could be a star.
Yeah,
we've just seen those flashes. We need to see a lot more.
Well, and despite that, he is apparently leading all NFC tight ends in Pro Bowl voting, which doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. Another thing that I'm hoping to see the Lions do, and you mentioned it earlier, is I would like to see them continue to lose. And you say wait until the last 3 games, but obviously if they wait until the last 3 games after winning their next 2 and they get to 6 and 7, some fans are going to start talking about making the playoffs. And in the meantime, they will hurt their draft position. And come April, you'll start to really feel that. But they need to lose. They need to lose all of their final 5 games because they have a chance to only lose 3 of them. And one of the games that they could potentially win, particularly if Galladay plays, is the game in 3 days against the Bears. And who knows what type of Minnesota Vikings team they'll face in the final game. But I don't want to see them bring Darrell Bevel back because he leads them to a 3-5 finish. I don't want to see them blow their draft pick. And, looking at their potential draft positioning, if they win 2 out of their final 5, they'll finish 6-10, which would be around the number 9 pick, which is where they're sitting right now. That's a lot different than finishing 5-11, where they'd be assured a top 7 pick, or tanking out to finish 4-12, where they would be assured a top 5 pick. Additionally, I think a top 5 pick is more appealing to a coach and general manager tandem than sitting there at number 9 or 10.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, this is it every year. Like, I've been a Lion fan for over 30 years. Over 20 of those years, everybody's rooting. I'm rooting against them more than I'm rooting for them. What the hell kind of team is that?
Well, here's what needs to happen. For everybody to start rooting for them in their final 5 games, and the first 11 games have a winning record. Don't have a losing record by 3 games in your first 11 games. If they're sitting here 7-4, nobody's sitting here saying, let's tank down the stretch after we fired the coach and the general manager. But no, they lost 7 of their first 11 games. Therefore, it's about time to tank. This is not about, we need to change our attitudes. The Lions need to start winning most of their first 11 games, and then you can root for them to win down the stretch. Pretty simple.
All right, you've convinced me. I want them to lose all their games.
And by the way, while you lose, don't cover the spread. All right? Folks out there are going to be betting, like me, on the Lions to lose and not cover. Don't make it close. They're 3-point underdogs to the Bears. Lose by 4 or more. They're going to be 10, 11, 12-point underdogs to the Packers. Lose by 15. If you want to make it a nail-biter so that fans who are betting on the game are watching until the final drive, that's great. But we don't need Matt Stafford with a backdoor cover losing to the Packers by 6 points by throwing a touchdown with 30 seconds to go when they're a 10-point underdog. We don't need that. You didn't bring Lions fans wins. Bring them some money when they bet against you.
Keith on the live chat says Trubisky will throw 3 touchdowns. Some bombs on defense. I told you guys last week that Watson would throw for 4 touchdowns and 2 to Fuller. You know what, Keith? You did say that. You were 100% correct.
S-O-L.
Credit to you. You did say exactly that, and it did happen. All right. I'm ready to get to this 4th chapter, which is going to be your chapter, chap. You can't wait for this chapter.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a heck of a lot of fun.
You ready to do it?
Yes. Let's turn the pace of the 4th chapter.
All right. And we got a ball to Detroit. We also have a superstar player swap with Westbrook and John Wall. But let's get to the balls part first. LiAngelo Ball. The Pistons, it's not Lonzo, it's not LaMelo, it is LiAngelo Ball who's coming in, and your excitement level for this two-way signing.
Look, I think that we all know that I've wanted some sort of Ball in Detroit for years. I wanted Lonzo Ball multiple years ago, but obviously that wasn't going to happen because the Pistons weren't in position to get Lonzo, and then I wanted LaMelo this year, but they were not lucky and fortunate when it came to the lottery, and I didn't think they had much of a chance of getting LiAngelo Ball because I think as of a couple of days ago he was on the G League roster of Oklahoma City or Dallas or one of those 2 teams, but then all of a sudden it pops up yesterday that Jello LiAngelo Ball signed what is it, an Exhibit 8 or Exhibit 10 contract. I don't even know what the heck that means, but I'm excited about this, and I definitely want to know what people out there think in terms of their excitement level about him. One other guy who is very excited about LiAngelo Ball is his father, LeVar Ball. We know that LiAngelo is the worst prospect of the 3, but if you ask LeVar, the father, to break down his game, he's pretty excited. Here's what he told Shannon Sharp on a podcast called Club Shay Shay, and he said this. He actually said this. Yeah, it's a weird name, but he said this yesterday, and this was announced. This was before the announcement of LiAngelo to the Pistons was made. Oops.
you know what, I ain't gonna make it. I don't feel like working out today.
Such a
They
good
cut
show.
all from the same cloth, and everything they say Melo and Zoe can do, Jello can do. Oh, you got to get stronger. You got to get a better jump shot. Jello shoot better than both of them, and he's bigger and stronger than both of them.
So, bigger, stronger. Is there going to be, I don't know if they're going to be a summer league. Is they going to have enough time for a summer league?
Hey,
or they just...
You don't even need a summer league. Check this out. You got Lonzo and you got Melo. You got two bookends, Jello in the middle. Don't think that the representation or whatever can't say, excuse me, can you give Jello a shot over here? Let's see what he look like with his brother. He got that now. And, you know, Rock Nation also got that pool where they can talk behind the scenes and get Jello a tryout or something. And
that's all you want. You just want his foot in the door.
His foot going to be in the door on the fact that look what he bringing to. He can go to any franchise right now and watch how the franchise blows up. Why? His last name is Ball. His last name is Ball, and he can play. He can shoot at a high clip. So what I'm saying is he's going to get the opportunity. And like I said, the best thing, hey, put him over there with Charlotte and watch what happens. But he's going to get another tryout somewhere else. I don't know. I'll tell him to do their job because what they did, Jello got both ankles ready. He healthy. He's running. He playing. He's shooting. As soon as he steps somewhere, folks going to be like, oh, I didn't know he was this good. Now, he get with his brothers. Whoever he get with, Melo, they're going to average 15 assists. And they pass it to him, he going to average anywhere from 25, 30 points a game.
Whoa. 25 to 30 points per game as I spit on my computer. 25 to 30 points per game for LiAngelo Ball. How can you not be excited about this? The Pistons have never had a 25 to 30 point per game scoring guard. Not even Isaiah Thomas did that. Actually, I think the last guy to do that was Dave Bing. So that was back in 1971. Look, do I think he's going to be that good? No. Is he the worst Ball? Yes. Did he sign a non-guaranteed contract? Yes. Is he likely headed to the G League? Yes. Is he a below-average athlete and a below-the-rim athlete? Yes. But he's still a Ball, as his father said. He still is going to be playing for the Pistons in the preseason. He's still a reality TV star. He's still going to sell jerseys. Not as many as his brothers, but he's still going to sell jerseys. And the Pistons' biggest weakness on the roster is the shooting guard position. He's got a shot. I don't think he's going to score 25 to 30 a game, but he's 22 years old. He's got a decent shot, and his competition right now is Wayne Ellington, Deron Wright, and Rodney McGruder at shooting guard. I'm excited about him getting a chance. I think there's a role for him on this team. Maybe not as a starter though.
Yeah, well, I think Fith also in that mix with the shooting guard. I think he'll score 25 or 30 out for the drive in Grand Rapids. I mean, I could see him doing that. I think one thing about Jello is we know he has sticky hands. He got picked up in China for the 5-finger discount, so we know he's got that going for him.
A defensive presence with the steals.
Yeah, I mean, so if you own a sunglass hut or something, you might want to keep your eye on Jello if he comes strolling in or whatever else. But, he doesn't need to do any hot finger stuff anymore. The guy, I think whatever he's getting paid, I didn't know what his contract, he talked about it being non-guaranteed, but I think he gets $1 million or more for being on Instagram, for being an influencer. So, I mean, he's just here for the show. Brand. Yeah, I mean, so, this guy's already a made man. He doesn't need basketball. So he'll have his phone out. He'll be shooting a lot of videos and everything else. But I think the most important thing that you said there is, you went through all those two guards there, and, none of those guys are jumping out at me. I mean, Wayne Ellington, made some threes last year. Those other guys, this is – I like, actually, the signing here. It just fits where the Pistons are going to be for the next couple of years. They're going to have a revolving door. They're going to be bringing in all kinds of guys like Jello and seeing if they can stick and be part of something in the future. So there's not a lot of ventured here. Could be a lot gained. So I like it. I'm not a fan of LeVar. I know he'll think that LiAngelo will have a shot because when you're going through the roster, the Pistons won't have more than 3 white guys starting. So he'll be cool with that. So, I mean, that was something that he said about Lonzo when he was at UCLA.
He didn't like TJ Leaf being white and the other teammates being white.
Why they weren't going to win because they had 3 white guys in the starting lineup. It's like, yeah, I'm not racist. That's just being factual. Okay.
Yeah. Probably not a fan of Mason Plumlee. But here, you know what? The other thing is...
I think he's right on Mason Plumlee's foot speed, though.
Yeah. But The other thing is when you look at a potential role for LiAngelo Ball on the roster, it doesn't look like he's going to start. Although, like we mentioned, there is the opportunity with this being a position of weakness. There's going to be a push from the fans to get him an opportunity to play. Obviously, LeVar is going to be nonstop on social media, on video programs like Club Shay Shay or whatever, saying you have to start LiAngelo. And it's going to hurt that there aren't any fans, but the fans are going to want to see him play. And if the Pistons are up by 20 or they're down by 20, there is no Darko Milicic anymore, but they could have LiAngelo Ball take over that role of human victory cigar or human victory cigar for the opposition. When the Pistons are down by 20 points with 2 minutes to go, fans are going to stay tuned into that game from home because they can't attend games, saying, I hope they put in LeVar Ball. There are going to be lots of fans saying, I hope they don't put in, or not LeVar Ball's son. I hope they put in LiAngelo Ball. A lot of fans are going to say, please don't put him in, and I hope that he dribbles the ball off of his foot, but that'll be a reason to watch a blowout because they'll want to see whether LiAngelo Ball gets in and what he does.
All right. A former Piston, Christian Wood, is going to be playing alongside John Wall and maybe James
Build the
Harden.
wall.
Let's get into we'll just have a quick opinion here on the big NBA deal with Westbrook going to the Wizards and John Wall heading to the Rockets along with a heavily protected future one. What'd you make of the deal?
Well, I think for the for James Harden, first of all, because I think that's the most important person to talk about, this is not going to convince him to want to stay in Houston. He's got himself Christian Wood. You know, that's a nice little piece. He's got himself DeMarcus Cousins, who might blow out another, leg muscle or something like that. That's not going to get him to stay. And now he brings in another injury-prone player in John Wall, who hasn't played in 2 years. Oh, you get a second-round pick, a first-round pick, but that's not for a couple of years. This is not going to help out Houston a heck of a lot. Although John Wall, when he plays, is going to be more of a guy who will defer than Russell Westbrook did. And in terms of Westbrook going to Washington, he gets to reunite with Scotty Brooks, which is nice. He plays in a weaker Eastern Conference. They've got some pieces in Beal and Hachimura, but they're not going to be contending for a championship in Washington. So, he can put up some stats. He can make the playoffs as a team that's not going to have home court advantage, but that's about it for him in Washington.
It's amazing when you add these guys' contracts up. I did it today. I forgot already. What is it, 132? Both of them are owed almost exactly.
Yeah, over 3 years.
Yeah, so that part's amazing. I mean, so this the only teams that you could make a trade for with these two guys that were dubbed as the worst contracts. In the NBA, I think the Rockets, remember they had to give up 2 first-rounders and 2 pick swaps to get Russell Westbrook in there. So they're really up against it. They get a protected pick from the Wizards here, but I would suspect that they would end up moving James Harden somewhere, trying to get some picks for him and try to get this rebuild rolling. So that's the way I looked at that. And, I liked John Wall when he was healthy, 100 years ago. He was a fun guy to watch, but, he relies on his speed so much, and that Achilles, that's a tough thing to try to bank on. I think that Rockets are, looking at all those picks, that they have to cough up so many of them here that they just got to try to replenish them by, seeing if they can get something for James Harden down the line. All right. Let's gamble.
Let's do that. Let's turn the page to the 5th chapter. That means it's time for the major wager. We'll try to give you some picks to make to get you some big money this weekend or perhaps even tonight. Dennis, what game or games are you looking at?
Well, I bet the Browns are getting 5.5 against Tennessee back on Tuesday. I'm going to go to the college football world here for my pick here. I'm going to take the Buckeyes laying at 24. I know they're shorthanded, but they really do have to make an impression for all the reasons that we've been talking about here. I bet Kirk Herbstreit's going to bet this game. Somebody will throw down some money for Kirk. Maybe he'll just come on the air now that he's not playing it above board anymore and just talk about, who he's gambling on and stuff too. So I'll take Herbstreit minus 24 against the Spartans.
Yeah, I wouldn't touch that game just because I don't know who's going to be playing in that game, and Ohio State has not been as impressive as they need to be.
Herbstreit's told me. Herbstreit's let it out there. He's just dishing on everything now. He thinks the Buckeyes are going to run up the score here.
And they better if they want to make the playoff. I took Marquette -3 over Oklahoma State on Tuesday. That was a bad pick because Oklahoma State won that game straight up. So much for taking my sister's law school. Tonight I'm going to take St. Mary's. They're a 15.5-point favorite against Texas Southern. St. Mary's is known for being the second best team in Gonzaga's conference every year. Texas Southern has covered in 2 of their 3 games, but St. Mary's has covered in all 3 of their games, and they've covered in each of their last 2 games by at least 9 points. So take St. Mary's to win and take St. Mary's to cover that 15.5 points. And this is not one of those games that started during our show. It doesn't start for another hour and a half at 10 p.m.
Nice pick, chap. This was your best show. You know, it took you 59. I don't know. I don't know which other one it was.
You are ripping me for backing a Buckeye. So I think
you know what? I'm all right with you having opinions. That's why we're on here together. Like if you always just agreed with everything that I said and always backed Michigan, I'd be like, I'd be looking for somebody else to do the show with. So
well, and then of course you backed the Buckeyes in the second chapter, saying we gotta find any way we can to stick them in the CFP anyway.
That was weird. I can guarantee I'll be trying to make any jokes about Kirk Herbstreit for the rest of the college football season at any point that I can. He deserves at least that. All right, you deserve to have a great weekend. So I hope you do have it. We'll be back with you here on Tuesday for the 5th chapter. For Brian Chapman, I'm Dennis Fithy, and so long.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the 5th chapter. Brian Chapman, Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spitting the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the 5th chapter.